Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. We are group four today doing a podcast about mental health and what we learned through our presentation through AACI.
Let's start by talking about like the reflection on our training. How did you guys feel about that?
I thought the training was fun. Everybody had conflicting schedules, of course, but we all eventually got through it, and I learned some pretty interesting things, especially from the BSBB training. They gave us a that notebook that we had to write about how culture and diversity affects mental health.
I also thought the training was like overall pretty good, and I think that it just kind of enlightened me a little bit of just things to look out for, and then ways to like help other people and like offer resources that are like available to like a lot of people, and you could always just offer support for people that need it. And there's not really like something that you could like really force, but you could always just be just a supportive person in general.
I also agree. I think it was challenging how we all have different schedules, but it was really interesting on learning about what to be aware of when there's mental health issues and how to help people and bring up the resources there is for them to look up for.
I also thought that the BSBB training was really helpful. Um, I think it was cool that we were able to learn about like different signs to look out for and how to reach out and how to help others. I think it's really important, especially as students in college. Sometimes we can all be like really stressed, and it'll be nice to just help one another because sometimes it can feel like lonely or really stressful. So for someone to reach out to you, I think that's really.
I agree. It also like definitely made me start thinking about like kind of my own like schedule and just kind of how like everything's been going on with me and like my own mental health and also like the people around me as well.
Yeah, like I totally agree with that. I feel like it's also like all of us just kind of always just going through something, and I feel like a lot of people our age it's very common for someone just to have some sort of mental health thing, something just kind of always going on. There's a lot of stress. I know a lot of us are graduating the next few years, and a lot of us are also in like 165B, which is prepping us for internships, and we're hoping all of us are prepping for that. So I feel like that just adds more to the stress. So our mental health, I think, is very important, and I think this training just really like it kind of just shows that help is available, and it kind of also encouraged us to look for ourselves as well as other people, and I think it just really just connected us a little bit more.
Something I did really like about the whole training as a whole was the workshop on emotional intelligence. I feel like that helps a lot with dealing with our own mental well-being and wellness because having full control of your emotional intelligence plays a big part in being able to control your mental health, like being able to self-regulate, self-motivate, and being self-aware of your emotions. And knowing that will also help you learn how to sort of influence your own peers' emotions as well, which that was kind of my big takeaway from the whole training.
I feel like we have spoken through everything that we did, and it was like an amazing experience. And we're fortunate to have this training because some of people don't know about the resources, which is like now we get to make this podcast to help out other people listening. So I think that's a very nice like thing to do for the community and the population. And how do you guys feel like um how does culture can affect our mental health? Like what are your guys' opinions on that?
I feel like it's just the beliefs everyone has. They're different. Like for me, I come from a Hispanic background. So a lot of people that are from the Hispanic community, they are first generation college students. And I feel like the culture from home and the culture from the university differs a lot from each other. So parents don't understand how time consuming schooling can be, and sometimes they put more responsibilities on top of your school responsibilities, and also if you work, that gets like overwhelming.
I can relate to that as well. Also being Hispanic, there's a term actually within the Hispanic community called machismo, which is essentially a term to, it's basically you don't want to be perceived as weak or feminine, this particularly towards men. So even like being in school and being like very vulnerable, just being like, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, I'm feeling burnt out, I'm stressed. Like a lot of people within the Hispanic community, they don't really show that aspect because it's just this whole idea that's been instilled in their head for who knows how long. And it's something that I noticed within my own family, and it's something that you really have to work towards to just sort of breaking that cycle.
I actually like totally agree with that too. But I grew up in a different background. I'm like a mixed race, so I'm like half Asian and half Lebanese. So it's very different. I think just growing up is just a lot of cultural pressures, and I wasn't also born here either. I also immigrated when I was like really young. So I think that also affected me growing up because my parents never really experienced college like I have experienced college and had the opportunity that I've had. So their pressures towards me is very different than what they think is like what is actually happening. And I think that just like also just adds more pressure to just like, oh, you just gotta graduate, you just gotta finish schooling, you gotta do this. Why are you like taking so long? Like all this stuff. So it's just, I think always having your parents kind of looming over you tends to affect you as well.
I definitely agree with that. I'm also like I'm first gen. My parents are both Pakistani, so they were born there. And I definitely agree that like there's a lot of pressure, especially with like, like graduating and like getting everything done on time. It can uh definitely like your focus can just be on school all the time, and like as a result like you won't really think about like your mental health or like just like your health in general. Yeah.
And then going off of that, like for myself, I feel like mental health was something that's been really stigmatized growing up. Um, like if you were to get like help for mental health, it's because you're seen as like crazy or there's like something wrong with you. But what they don't understand is that like sometimes we're just going through things and then seeking out help. There's nothing wrong with that. As students, we can be really stressed, and then we feel the pressures from our family, from school, and that can take a toll on us. So I think we should like reach out if needed.
I've definitely heard some of those words before on how if you're trying to seek therapy or you need someone to talk to, you're suddenly going crazy, or you need to take some kind of medicine, which is what my parents told me back then when they thought mental health wasn't really a thing. It was just anything physical that they could see would be considered something that should be taken care of and not mental. They just think mental, like your mentality is always good and you shouldn't really think too much about it. Just worry about other things. But now, after taking this BSBB training and being able to talk with many of to talk with people I've never really knew before, I got to learn about the different perspectives of everyone and how they approach their mental health. And by doing research, allowed me to learn more about how our campus provides free therapy sessions for students. I think it was 3 free sessions, which is something I really wanted to really look into and try to put myself out there and think, okay, now's the time that I should really be focusing on my mental health and taking advantage of those sessions on campus, and they're free too. So
Yeah, I must agree with everything you guys have said because like as students we suffer from like not suffer but like we have to go through school, and that can be hard for each of our mental health. And I feel like being being like the first generation, like in most of our family, it's hard because we have all the pressure, and like we want to build off on like a future for our family so that we can like not upgrade but like be support to our family in the future. And I feel like this is what made us who we are today, and this is a vulnerable topic to talk about, but I'm glad that we are all talking about this because this is gonna help someone who else feels like an outsider. But listening to this podcast, I feel like that's gonna be a good thing for everyone to hear. And like, how would you guys think about like being in eyes or ears for like our college peers?
I think this training and just honestly just talking about it more in general made me just like way more comfortable to talk about it. I think in the past I've always never really minded talking about my own personal like mental health and like offering support, but I didn't really know like what I could do to other people besides just like listening. Like I feel like maybe some advice, but that's about it. But I feel like with this training, it kind of really opened my eyes into other methods of like supporting them, being able to give them like actually good and valid advice, as well as showing them like, hey, maybe like you could go to these resources, and then just kind of show them that it is available, and like trying to help remove the stigma, like Marissa said about like trying to seek help tends to be hard for some people, and then being able to support people to be more willing to actually like seek that help.
I also agree with Gabe. I feel like I've always been really open with my own emotions, but I didn't know, like I knew how to hear out, to like hear, be there listening to people, but I really didn't know what to say back. I was just like, I'll listen to you, but I don't really know how to help you. And with this training, I am more aware, and also I feel more confident when it comes to like helping people out and providing resources.
And going off of what Joanna said, um, I think before the training, I was kind of like in my own bubble, but now after the training, I'm like more aware, and then I kind of like pay attention more to others and just to see if they need any help or anything like that. And because now that I'm aware and I have the resources available, I feel like I'm more like willing to help.
I feel like with the training, the BSBB training, of course, it says in the title, be sensitive, be brave. Besides from the fact that I could only listen to people and that's all I could ever do, like many of you. With the training, I now know how to build rapport. I think that's how you say it. Um, by just really focusing on the person, on what they need and not what they want to hear, kind of in a way. I remember that in the booklet they gave us, or the workbook, it had a list of questions that were not exactly us. It was more of like questions for us to help guide that person into seeking professional help and what they should hear, instead of just sitting there and listening to them and just not giving any feedback that is helpful to them, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I think just overall the training was just able to be, at least for me, it just made me more like a sensitive person in a sense of like being more willing to listen as well, and then showing more like respect towards the person's problems, and then being able to be just like, hey, you need like if you do need the help, like I could totally help you find it. And there's so many resources that, at least for me, like looking into it, I felt like for my own mental health, like a few years ago when it was like a little lower, I thought that finding help was very, very hard, especially through insurance and through all these other methods. And I feel like that's honestly the biggest hurdle for me. And I think a lot of people is just like being able to find that help and then going through it. I feel like that's just was always really hard. And I think that this training really showed me that it's way more accessible than I think it is. And there's always kind of like a person or multiple people out there that is willing to help and now I'm like also like one of those people that I feel like I'm just like willing to help. And I feel like SJSU does a really good job on offering that help. And I think going to those like therapy sessions could also just kind of show like if you do well, or like if you like them, then maybe you do need more professional help, and then they could also help you find that.
I'm so glad that everyone here had a chance to voice their opinion and show how this training helped a lot with their mental health and realizing what mental health is. And I feel like we were bystanders, but now we are heroes to other people who are listening. But yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and listening. And I hope this podcast that you just listened to helps a lot. And feel free to search up resources like mental health to help with you to cope with your mental health, and because mental health is very important.